What's going on, guys? It's Doss. Welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be a quick updated review of my 2005 Ford Taurus. I've had this car for 3 months, put 7,000 miles on it. I specifically bought it as a daily driver, a grinder, a door dasher, a cash car pretty much. Got this car from Facebook Marketplace. The original asking price from the previous seller was 30 grand, but I got it for a steal of 2,700 bucks. And well, there's a couple of reasons why I went with this car. When I go for a car, it has to check a significant amount of boxes that I have in place for it, whether it's a car, truck, van, SUV, station wagon, semi, it doesn't matter. A grinder like this, got to check a significant amount of boxes that I have in place for it. One of the main reasons why I went with this car is because I'm very familiar with late 90s and early 2000s Fords. Especially with this car, I already have the engine that's underneath this hood. In my first car, I still have it. It's a 2004 Ford Ranger. This car shares the exact same engine as that truck. It's a 3.0 liter V6, so I'm very familiar. Just a different transmission because it's a front-wheel drive car and the Ranger is a rear-wheel drive truck. So you have a traditional setup in the Ranger. You have the engine facing front, and then you have the transmission behind it, and you have the long drive shaft that sends power to the back wheels. In this car, front-wheel drive, so you have the engine and the transmission right in front of you. Now you notice it's a pretty decent looking car. I'm not going to drive anything that has any tape or trash bags over the windows, or, you know, the whole side is crushed in. It's got to look like a pretty decent car. I'm not going to drive anything beat up, right? I mean, I just can't. No, I'm not doing that at all. This is a really nice looking car. After all, they made a couple of sisters and cousins and brother versions. Mercury had the Sable, I think. And then they made a Lincoln version, which they put the 4.6 liter V8, extremely reliable V8 in this car. So now that since we're on the outside, let's talk about the things that I've added to this car so far. So these are new sets of taillights because one of them was cracked and they were, faded a little bit. It looked a little old anyway, so it was time to go. So I got a new pair off of Amazon, real cheap. And speaking of the lights, the front pair are brand new as well. These are brand new. I usually do this with my older cars. Obviously the original headlights were faded and they were all yellow and ugly. So you can restore them if you want to, but to make them look really nice, this just completes the look of the car when you have these nice brand new headlights on here. Tires all the way around. The previous owners claimed that they were brand new, but one of these front tires had the wires poking out one day when I checked up underneath here when we were replacing the starter. Let's talk about the squat. These cars are related to the Ford Crown Victorias and the Grand Marquis. I don't know, something about these cars, they just had weak rear suspensions over time as they get older. Even if they didn't have a lot of miles, they would just start to sag. I guess maybe the car it's a heavy car. I don't know the case, but they start to sag like that. You can see this car, the wheels kind of tucked a little bit, even though it doesn't have much in the trunk. It's got some stuff in the trunk, but not much. Even if it didn't have anything in the rear, it'd still be sagged. It's just a weaker rear suspension. I don't even know what's underneath there, if it's coil springs, struts, shocks, whatever the case is. Speaking of down there, you can see right there behind the wheel, it's a drum brake. That's another similarity with my Ford Ranger. It's got disc brakes in the front and drum brakes in the rear. You don't know what drum brakes are. They're a lot more difficult to deal with than actual disc brakes. You just pop the one bolt off and you just fold the clamshell up on the disc brakes, but on this one you have to take this whole drum off, and there's all kinds of springs and everything that hold in the shoes that press up against that little brake, that drum right there, and that's what stops the car. They last a lot longer than disc brakes though, but they're definitely going to be a pain to replace if I want to try to do it myself, which I probably will since I have a little bit of experience with the Ranger. Now, speaking of the Ranger, we'll go ahead and just look at the inside for a quick second. Like I said, I use this car as a grinder. I drive the shit out of this car, so put a lot of miles on it. And you could see already off the rip, this is not your traditional average looking sedan setup. You don't have a center console. Even though this car, you could get one, you could get the exact same year with a center console. That's why it's got a transmission tunnel right there, but no transmission. It's only transmission in the front. You got your truck style column shifter, just like the Ford Ranger, like most trucks in this area, still to the day. You have your bench seat. It's an extremely uncomfortable seat, but it is definitely a bench seat because you do have your buckle and then all that right there. So this is definitely a seat, but you sit up high. You could tell that this seat is up high and it's not even really a seat, so your cheeks are going to be on one side or the other. But if you need it, it is there. This is a 6-seater vehicle. This was already here from the previous owner when I bought it. Very handy, nice. You got your USB, you got your Bluetooth, all that stuff, of course. The stereo system sounds pretty nice in this car. There's no blown out speakers, nothing like that. Park, reverse, neutral, drive, overdrive, and then your first gear right there as well. It seems like every older Ford I get into always has some cigarette burns on the passenger side. So there's one right there, and then you got one to the top right there. So when I say this car is great for door dashing, other than all that room on the inside, you have this key code right here, and it works. They always work no matter what, unless the battery on the vehicle is dead, which the Ranger doesn't have this, by the way. Unless the battery on the vehicle is dead, you will not be able to use this, of course, because it's electronic. But this works. They always do. They never really break. I mean, unless you rip off the buttons or, you know, something happens to the actual assembly itself. But it does work. And what I do most of the time is when I go in for orders, I just lock this just like that. Bam, just lock it just like that. Go inside, leave the car running, and then come back out, and then just put the code in. Let me see if I can do it real quick without looking. There we go. Put the code back in, and then you're back in. The car's still running, and you can drive off and just go just like that. Very handy for dashing. It makes it nice and quick and simple when you pick up your orders. And here's the rear. You got these nice cloth seats, even though you don't have any headrests. You have some anchors right here for the child seat, if that's something you need one day or whatever the case is. And then right here, of course, you got your little plastic foldable cup holders in case you need that. And then you got your nice little privacy wall right here. Knock that down and you can share some snacks or drinks or whatever you want to do in case like that, right? So we're sitting in the back, and you can see from this angle, you can see the wheels tucked even more a little bit, just like that. You got a little bit of rust right here for the state that we're in. That's pretty acceptable. But yeah, you got your child lock right there in case you need it. Pretty simple setup in the rear of this car. This car did come with 2 key fobs and 2 keys. See on the inside, as I was talking about, this car does not want to show you any information unless the doors are closed. Take a look at this right here. You open the door and you can't see, look, you can't see anything. It's not going to show you. Look, I'm pressing the button. You can't see. It says close door to reset. Look at that. Well, if it'll ever focus, but this is iPhone after all. See, look, it's not going to show you anything until you close the door. That's why I had to replace that switch on that rear door right there. I was talking about everything that I've added to this car. So we went over the tint, we went over the front headlights and taillights. This car doesn't have any fog lights. And we went over the tires. Take a look at this crack right here in the windshield. Now, this happened a couple of weeks ago when I was just driving on one of those, on one of the 2-lane roads. There was this truck coming along that had the open trailer with the rocks in it, and just you saw this meteor just coming up in slow motion, and then bam, right there on the front windshield, just like that. So it's been growing ever since, and I'm not gonna replace it because as soon as I do, it's gonna get hit with another asteroid, meteoroid, whatever, meteoroid. It's gonna get hit with another asteroid, so I'm not even gonna I'm gonna just leave it like that. I learned my lesson a long time ago trying to fix stuff that's been broken, and it wasn't even my fault. Now, like I said, I put 7,000 miles on this car in 3 months, and it's been a little bit of a rough 3 months because I'm not gonna lie, the first time it technically left me stranded, but not really. Let me tell you guys about that story, right? I'll tell you guys the first time and the most recent time. So the first time is when I was cleaning out the engine bay. This was a super dirty engine bay. It was like extremely dirty. It was dusty, kind of like that for the most part. And as you can see, it looks fairly clean. I was putting a little bit of mist on it, and then, well, the starter was already an old starter, so I guess that little bit of mist kind of ruined it all the way. So what happened was it shorted out the starter to the point where you'd have to wait maybe 40-45 minutes to let the charger get enough crank in it or whatever, and then it would crank over slowly, but it would start. And then you turn it off immediately again after that, and it won't start. You have to wait a while, another 45 minutes or so. So that was the first time it technically left me started. Hold on, guys. VoiceOver DOS is taking over to explain the most recent breakdown, since regular DOS in the video is stuttering and messing up on most of his lines, hence the why you see so many cutouts and edits in the video so far. Long story short, gonna get straight to the point, since this is my 11th take trying to figure out how to explain it as a full story. This car has always had a rattling noise coming from the belt area since I bought it from the previous owner. Over time, it's just gotten louder and louder. 7,000 miles later, I guess it finally decided to quit. That rattling noise was the clutch on the front of the compressor, or the wheel that the belt is wrapped around. And over time, it just got louder and louder, which means it was getting looser and looser. And eventually it got stuck and ripped the belt in half, just pieces everywhere underneath the hood pretty much. So they ended up having to replace the compressor, obviously, and refilling the whole system. I don't even think there was any Freon in there anyway. But at least there's ice cold AC now, but it also affected the charging system, which is what the car was telling me as it was dying and coming back to life while I was driving it before it initially broke down. So they checked out the battery, which was old and fried. It wouldn't hold a charge, so went ahead and got a new one of those. And then the alternator wouldn't hold a charge for the rest of the system, so went ahead and got another alternator as well. So, good job to the mechanics out there who helped me out with this, but can't give them all the credit because they forgot. Well, the next day I drove the car about 17 miles and it started to overheat. Well, long story short about that is that I guess, I don't know if it's because of all the new parts or whatever, but one of the main fuses was blown inside that fuse box that you see sitting right over there next to the battery. And also, they forgot to plug in the cooling fans, which are right there in front of that exhaust manifold right there. They forgot to plug in the cooling fans, and that solved the problem of the overheating issue. I just noticed the needle just going up. To be honest, I don't even know how long. Well, I'm pretty sure I would have seen that, but the needle just started going up. And I'm like, really? Here goes another. The next day after getting the car back from the shop, and that's all it was. Though it was a blown fuse, which it was a pretty huge fuse, for the old school Fords like that. It was some big fuses. And then the cooling fans weren't even plugged in because they had to take those out to obviously get to that compressor buried deep down there underneath that power steering piece right there. So yeah, it was definitely quite a bit of work, but the car is back up and running again. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Doss from the video take back over, and I hope you guys enjoyed this little explanation, because this was like the 89th millionth take of me trying to figure out how I can explain this, but not really. I mean, the story's not really necessary, right? You just need to know what happened and what broke on the car, right? All right, let's get back to the video. Another early 2000s, late 90s Ford quirk is the loud power steering system. Now, this car's power steering system has become a lot louder since all that work has been done under the hood, but I'll show you right now. Will it focus? Will it focus? There we go. Now it's focusing now, pretty much for the most part. See, the idle it's a little high right now because it's been cooling off a little bit, but you'll see it drop down. But listen to this. You hear that? See, it's pretty quiet because we're on the inside, but it's extremely loud out there. All right, guys, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end the video right here. This was meant to be a quick updated review on how this car has been. 3 months, 7,000 miles. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next, because it's definitely been interesting so far with this car, and obviously going to keep you guys updated and posted on what else is next or what else happens. Stay tuned, and that's it.